Hi, welcome to today's video where I will show you how to make these Valentine's earrings. They are stitched using the brick stitch technique. I've drawn this pattern for it. For anyone interested, I create these patterns in Bead tool software. If you are planning to stitch the heart, I definitely recommend downloading my pattern. The link is in the description box as always. You'll also find the list of all the materials we will need for making the heart there. If you have one, definitely use a bead mat. It will keep your beads from rolling everywhere and will really make your work easier. Next, I will need a special beading needle, then some thread. I like using Fireline. This one is in crystal with a 0.12mm thickness. For brick stitch projects, Fireline is really great because it helps the beadwork hold its shape nicely. As long as you don't pull too tight, the work will not twist. Then we will need some scissors or a thread zap. It depends on what you prefer or have. Lastly, ideally we will need some high quality, consistent beads. Here I'm using TOHO Treasure. They are very high quality Japanese beads. Or of course the classic choice is Delica. It's really nice if you choose beads that have a cylindrical shape, because the brick stitch will look much better that way compared to using regular round beads. Since I'm turning these hearts into earrings, I will prepare these two ear hooks. I will not forget the two ear nuts either. Then I will need two jump rings or split rings. It depends on what you prefer. Also a few smaller beads. These are size 15-0. I will use them for the loop that will hold the jump ring. So just a tiny bit is enough. But if you don't have them, no worries, you can use 11-0 beads instead. Of course, you will need some pliers as well, just some flat nose pliers and round nose pliers. We'll be using them just to open the jump rings. Alright, let's get started. When you are working on brick stitch projects, it's best to start stitching from the widest point. It's probably the most practical way. So I have numbered the rows from 1 to 20. I will start with row 14 and I will keep going down to row number 1. Then I will finish the two curves of the heart, and I actually do it by starting with the 2-row brick stitch method. That means I start stitching 2 rows at once, in this case row 14 and row 13. I will show you how to do that in a second. The work will look better, it won't be so wiggly, and it will be easier to hold it in your hands. You will see. First, I will cut a piece of Fireline. I recommend cutting about 150 centimeters of thread. This length will be enough for one full heart. Now I will thread the needle. And the first thing I will do is pick up 3 beads. Don't mind my needle, it's not a beauty anymore, but at least it shows I'm working with it. I will slide the 3 beads down to the end of the thread. I will leave a long enough tail so I can weave the thread into the beadwork later. I'll prepare it like this on my fingers so you can see it clearly. Now I will take the needle and pass it through the first bead I added. And I will tighten it. What happens now is that I will create a little triangle shape here. To keep you oriented, here's row 14 and here's row 13. So now I will start adding beads in a zigzag pattern. I will pick up 1 bead and pass the needle straight through it, moving up. And I will tighten it. It should look like this. And now I will pick up another bead and pass the needle through it, moving down. I will keep going like this until I've added the exact number of beads from the pattern. In the top row, I need 18 beads. And in the bottom row, there will be 17. So I will pick up 1 bead again. And I will keep stitching the beads in a zigzag pattern. If you are interested in more detailed tutorials, you can find them on my channel, where I also show this technique. I demonstrated with larger beads, so it's much easier to see. To make the beadwork look nice, it really helps that I'm using Fireline thread. It keeps the shape nicely. If I were using a Sloan or Nymo thread, the work wouldn't stay as tight and would be a bit looser. So now we have achieved 18 beads in the top row and 17 in the bottom row. I find it easier to stitch upward, so I will flip it around. So just to clarify, I will show you here on this piece, I will be stitching upward for this part. Now I will stitch row 12 and do a decrease. The heart will actually curve inward like this. If you want a more detailed tutorial on the decrease, you can find it on my channel, of course. The link is up here. I will simplify it for you here. At the start of the row, I will always pick up 2 beads. But now I won't pass the needle through the bead itself. I will go under the thread bridge. And since I'm doing a decrease, I will skip the first thread bridge and go under the second one. Just like that. Now I will pass the needle up through the second bead. Now you'll see that the beads aren't sitting properly yet. So I need to reinforce the connection. I will pass the needle through the adjacent bead, going down. And then back up through the second bead. And tighten it. Not too much, just enough. And now you can see that the beads have settled nicely into place. I will continue. This time I will pick up only 1 bead. Go with my needle under the next thread bridge. And pass the needle through the bead again, moving up. And tighten. I will keep going until I get to the last thread bridge. At the end of the row, we'll do a decrease again, which in this case is really simple. I will show you that at the end of the row. So I will pick up 1 bead, go with my needle under the thread bridge, and pass through the bead up. And I will continue the same way. I've stopped 1 bead before the end. At the end of the row, we also need to do a decrease, but there's nothing easier than doing a decrease at the end of the row. So I will just stitch the bead. Go with my needle under the thread bridge. I set the tail aside so it doesn't get in the way, and pass the needle through the bead. That's how I do the decrease at the end of the row, and now I can continue. Row 11 is exactly the same. At the start of the row, I will again pick up 2 beads, skip the first thread bridge, go with my needle under the second thread bridge, and reinforce the connection again. I will go up and continue normally, adding 1 bead at a time. I will continue to the end of the row, just like the previous row. We will stitch the same way all the way to the round 8. When you finish row 8, I will show you what comes next. Because in row 7, there's actually a shift, a 2-bead jump, which could confuse someone. So I will show you how to handle that. This is what it looks like when I have finished row 8 and I'm getting ready to stitch row 7. And here I will show you how to do it because we'll be doing a double decrease. I need to get the needle into the right position. That means I need the thread to come out of the adjacent bead, not the outermost bead. So I will do that by passing the needle through these two beads. Don't worry about it at all. You can stitch back and forth through your work. Sometimes you just need to get the needle to a different spot. So don't be afraid, it won't damage your work. So now I've got the thread coming out of the second bead and you can see it here. Now I will continue just like in the previous rows. This means I will pick up two beads, skip the first thread bridge, go with my needle under the second thread bridge and reinforce the connection. Now I've created this little gap here. I will continue normally, adding one bead at a time, and at the end of the row, I will do another double decrease. That just means I will skip the last loop, and I will show you again, it's not complicated. So as you can see, I'm at the end of row 7. I've just got one more thread bridge left, and I'll simply leave it and continue straight to row 6. In this row, it's a classic decrease, so there's no need to think much about it. I will pick up two beads, go with my needle under the second thread bridge, and reinforce the connection so the beads sit nicely in place. I just want to share a few tips for working with brick stitch. Make sure you start with a strong base. Your first row of beads should be tight and well positioned to give you a solid foundation. This will help keep everything in place as you go. Try to keep your tension even throughout. Steady tension will make the beads sit nicely together, giving your work the neat and professional finish. Choose a good thread. Fireline is great because it's strong and holds the shape of your project very well. It makes your beadwork more stable, so you don't end up with a wobbly result. Don't be afraid to experiment with bead sizes. While the technique works best with cylinder beads, you can also use round beads for a softer look. Just keep in mind, round beads might make your stitches a bit looser. Lastly, make sure to reinforce your threads, especially around the edges, where there's more tension. A little extra security goes a long way in making sure your pieces stays together for a long haul. In row 5, I will just do a decrease. And in row 4, it's another double decrease. This means I need the thread to come out of the adjacent bead. So I will pass the needle through like this and continue with the decrease. And once again, we will have a double decrease at the end of the row, which is, of course, very simple. I will just finish here and won't add another bead. So as you can see, by this row, I only have 4 beads left. Now I will do a simple decrease and add just 1 bead. Now there are only 2 more rows left. So in this row, I will just do a decrease. And in the final row, I will add just 1 bead. This bottom part is done, all the way to the row 14. Now I will continue upward and stitch row 15. To get into position for stitching row 15, I will simply pass the needle through the entire beadwork to the spot I need to be. Either on the left or right side, it's up to you where you want to start. Don't worry about it. Feel free to stitch however you need to. For example, I will stitch to the right and my goal is to reach this last bead. So in row 15, it's a classic decrease. You already know how to do it. Pick up 2 beads and go with your needle under the second thread bridge. Then we continue in the usual way. Now I've completed row 15. In row 16, there is something new I haven't shown you yet. This is the increase at both the beginning and end of the row. So how do we do it? I will pick up 2 beads and go with my needle under the first thread bridge. When I did the decrease, I went under the second thread bridge, but for the increase, I go under the first thread bridge. Then the following steps are exactly the same, which means I will reinforce the connection. Now you can clearly see the increase. And now I will continue adding 1 bead at a time. At the end of the row, we will also do an increase. So I will show you that too. I'm getting close to the end of the row where I need to make the increase. There are several methods for doing this, and I will show you the one I used to get a really neat result. Here you can see that I have 1 more thread bridge available, so I will just add a bead through that. But I need to add another bead to the side, and I don't have any more free thread bridges. Some people reuse the same thread bridge, but I don't like that because the edge becomes a bit odd and the bead doesn't sit perfectly. So I do it like this. I will pick up 1 bead and pass my needle directly through the last bead from the previous row. This guarantees that the bead will sit nicely in place and won't stick out. Now I need to go back so that the thread comes up through the last added bead. I usually stitch diagonally to get there. Now I will return through the adjacent bead downward and then through the newly added bead upward. This will bring me to the starting position for adding the next row. As you can see, we are now at row 17 and we'll be making these arches. Looking at row 17, you can see that there's already a gap where there won't be a bead. I usually do it like this. I will first sew the one arc, then the other arc. This has proven to be the easiest approach for me. So now we'll make a decrease and sew 2, 4, 6 and 8 beads. Then we will continue with the next row where we'll again make a decrease and sew 2, 4, 6 and 7 beads. There's nothing complicated here, don't worry. So again, I will pick up 2 beads, skip the first thread bridge and go with my needle under the second thread bridge. Then I will reinforce the connection. The edge beads will sit nicely in place. So we have 2 beads. Three, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Now let's move to the next row. For this row we will do a decrease and we will sew a total of 7 beads. Then at the last row, row 20, we will do another double decrease. So again, I need the thread to come out of the adjacent bead. So one side of the heart is done, and now we'll make the second arc. Now I need to stitch in a way that the needle comes out of this bead. And now I will do a decrease. As you can see, we have created a gap nicely. Just like the first arc, we will sew the second arc in the same way. And now the heart looks finished. Finally, I will add a small loop for hanging. I will add it here. I will use those smaller beads, size 15-0. I will go back so that my needle comes out of this bead. Now I will pick up about 3 beads and then I will add a jump ring. I'll pass the needle through this edge bead. Of course, if you want, you can go through it 1 or 2 more times, however many times you want to reinforce it. I will stitch through it 1 more time. Great! Now it's time to weave the thread in. You don't need to make any knots, don't worry, it will hold. The process is simple. You pass the needle through several beads, back and forth. You will change direction a few times, or you can wrap around a group of beads, like 2 beads together, and the thread won't budge from its place. It's really reliable. I will cut off the excess thread. I will do the same with this extra tail. I will grab some pliers. I have flat nose pliers and round nose pliers here. I will open the jump ring, insert the ear hook inside the jump ring, and then close it. And here's the result. As an extra security measure, I will add an ear nut. So, what do you think of the earrings? Let me know in the comments how you like them. And are you planning to make a pair for Valentine's Day? If you are interested in the stitch, I use the brick stitch. And if you are curious about other tutorials, I have a whole playlist on my channel with more instructions. I'd really appreciate if you'd subscribe and give a like. It helps my channel grow. Thank you so much for watching and I will see you next time. Bye!